investigating injustice.
As a Black woman walking into the world, there's this high probability that something's going to happen to me when I leave the house.
Wild horses running in fear instead of free.
They've literally just been removed from the wild. They're half an hour out of the wild, and they're like, what the hell?
Serving up support for mental health.
I accepted that something was going on, and I learned that the only way that I'm going to overcome something like this is that if I talk to somebody about it.
Around the country and in your community, CBS News puts the stories that matter in focus.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. I'm Maurice Dubois. Over the next half hour, we'll travel across the country and uncover stories that have a big impact on the communities they're in. And we'll talk with the storytellers who've dedicated their work to elevating important issues. In Colorado, wild horses are being taken from their land to a prison yard in what critics are calling a waste of taxpayer money. And in New York, a young athlete is putting his mental health above the physical and creating a place for others to do so as well. But we begin in Chicago, where data reveals a harsh truth about victims of crime. In almost every single category of crime in Chicago, Black women are being targeted the most. CBS News Chicago investigative reporter Dorothy Tucker spotlights a troubling pattern that's been ignored for years.
We begin tonight with breaking news. Reports of multiple people shot on the city's west side.
It's all we think about.
Multiple suspects walked up to the victim demanding his car.
Our biggest fear.
Breaking tonight, 4 teens, 3 15-year-olds and 1 16-year-old, all shot while on a front porch.
Being the next victim of a crime.
The man stumbled down the Chinatown platform, bleeding from his neck from a gunshot wound.
But what are your chances?
We're not just talking about 1 or 2 robberies here. We're talking dozens of them.
Who's really the most at risk? Is it white men, white women, Asians, Hispanics, Black men? No, it's not. It's women who look like Tonia Thomas.
It's scary.
According to Chicago police crime data for 2022, when you look at all the offenses, count all the victims, Black women are the most at risk.
It's not fair.
Unfair because that 67,000 means 25% of crime victims are Black women. But they make up only 16% of Chicago's population. And when the CBS 2 investigators kept digging, we discovered even more disturbing data. Black women represented more than a third of kidnappings, 35% of assaults, 38% of batteries attacked and injured, 40% of rape victims. And let this sink in. Black women are 52% of human trafficking victims. Remember, they're only 16% of the population.
To have to navigate through life knowing that you'll potentially become a victim of a crime, primarily because of your race and your gender combined, it's not fair.
Thomas survived a rape.
This is all the paperwork from the hospital.
But she still feels the pain.
What happened to me, it won't go away.
It happened here, this West Side apartment building, at a friend's party.
I did have a couple of drinks, but nothing too crazy.
Pictures of a happy, smiling Thomas were taken just minutes before she felt dizzy and went to the bathroom. The police report details the horrors of the criminal sexual assault.
I remember being in the bathroom with my the person who assaulted me, and I remember just trying to get out of the restroom, but I couldn't get out.
The car was parked actually right there on the corner, right before the stop sign.
Even when it comes to nonviolent crimes and reports where police record race, Black women,
I couldn't believe it,
like Evelyn Sparks, are targets. Black women account for 24% of property thefts, arson 28%, car thefts 29%. Again, they're only 16% of the population.
You could see it out the window.
A 2019 Kia.
I parked there every day.
But in less than 10 minutes, it was gone. Photos of a trashed Kia found by police an hour later.
Somebody that takes something that you work so hard for, it just makes you feel very violated.
Why are they targets? Because they're, if you want to call it, easy prey. Yes, yeah.
Geneva Brown is a professor of criminology at DePaul University.
We just had an unfortunate Officer Preston who was killed. She was on her way home at 1:40 in the morning, and she was a target of a robbery, disproportionately. Black women are working third shift jobs. Black women are in communities where there is a lack of a middle class, a lack of a economic foundation that would deter this type of behavior.
Where they live, when they work, and listen to this, how they are perceived by criminals put a target on the backs of Black women.
You know that you're in a neighborhood where crime is the norm and not the exception. You're in a neighborhood where you know that the police are slow to respond. It creates that atmosphere where, unfortunately, you have people who feel empowered to become bolder or to continue to commit offenses until they're caught.
Why does it always have to be me? When do I get a break? When can I have some peace? I hear those words quite often in the work that I do.
Gabrielle Molden-Carwell works as a trauma therapist, helping Black women cope with their emotional pain.
It's disheartening and it causes self-doubt because something must be wrong with me.
She knows the trauma of sexual assault, not just because she treats survivors.
I've seen it in my mom.
She's lived with it.
I've seen it in my grandmother on my mom's side. I've seen it for myself.
And how old were you?
I was 12.
In the year 2000, when this photo of a carefree little girl posed for the camera, masking her torture.
It went on for about 6 months or so. I was angry. I was heartbroken.
It's very aggravating.
Rage keeps me up at night a lot.
How long have Black women been overrepresented? The CBS 2 investigators went searching for answers. We looked at every crime, every victim, not just 1 or 2 years, not 3 or 4. We went back 21 years. CBS 2 investigative data journalist Elliot Ramos crunched the numbers.
The stuff is buried in like statistical reports that come out every year.
But it's here, the latest, pages 79 to 81.
You got batteries, you got robberies.
Ramos combined the crime data
by day of week, by location type,
with race, sex, and age from police reports.
It was surprising at how consistently Black women in particular were over-indexed in relation to the population, like year after year after year.
The revelation, Black women have always suffered more than others. A surprising fact?
I was 16 when all of that was going on.
No one suffers more than young Black girls under 18. A perfect picture of a thriving high school junior at Little Village until she dated the wrong boyfriend.
I remember like him grabbing my arm and he swung on me and hit me. He was very violent. He was very mentally abusive. All of that was very traumatic.
From 2001 to 2022, for every white girl attacked and injured, there were 18 Black girls hurt.
I decided like I wanted to take some pills. I no longer was getting the A and B's that I wanted. So if my grades began to drop, I felt very burdened. And so I no longer wanted to feel burdened.
I feel like this is just as bad as the war on drugs, right? Like everything went shut down for that, but what about these crimes?
But for Black women disproportionately targeted by crime, there is no special task force, no mayoral commission.
We talk about big picture stuff, we talk about, hot topics, but Black female victimization is not a hot topic.
And Brown adds, no public outcry to address the core causes.
And I think that this is a conversation that needs to be had.
We've been counting CTA attacks, and this one marks 8 in the past 10 days.
As a Black woman walking into the world,
some of the 14 wounded are still in the hospital.
Every day and knowing there's this high probability that something's going to happen to me when I leave the house. And it's like, do you even leave home? But we have to. We can't, live a life where we're sheltered, but why should we have to?
And Dorothy Tucker joins us now. Dorothy, this lands like a gut punch. This is so tough to digest and take in. I'm curious to begin with, how did this story cross your radar? Because it's something you could kind of guess might be out there, but then you must have data. You do have data.
Oh, absolutely. This was one of those stories where we were all kind of sitting around having our weekly investigative meeting, and our data journalist, who you saw in the piece, Elliot, he said, you know, something really is interesting going on here. And I mean, he knows crime. And he looks at it and he said, and I'm seeing a pattern that's not just last year. I'm seeing that black women are over-indexed in almost every category. And it was one of those things where you turned your head and went, whoa, whoa, what did you say? And he said, yeah, I'm not just talking 2022. I'm talking if we go back decades.
And this hits you right close to home. I mean, what was your reaction when you heard this, when you saw it?
I think I probably reacted like a lot of black women do: fear, concern, panic. You know, I think that you could have 4 black women in a room, me and 3 other friends. One of us has probably been a victim. Wow. And when it comes to batteries, if there are just 3 of us in the room, one of us has probably been attacked. But let me ask you this. When you saw the story, when you heard the story, what did you think of?
Thought about my wife.
Yeah.
Thought about my family.
Yeah.
Right, my nieces. Absolutely, you think about that. I mean, it's disturbing. It's a part of life. You bake it in and you try to deal, much the way you described, right? It's just so disturbing. 18 times more black girls than white girls are affected by this, who are under the age of 18.
Under the age of 18.
At the same time, the other women who are affected by it are third shift workers. Those girls are not third shift workers. Why black girls so over-indexing when they're under 18? That's just, the why is the part that is so unnerving.
And the why is the part that we need to answer. You know, because you're talking about your young niece, you know, younger sisters and such. Under 18, for every 1 white girl, there are 18 black girls who've been attacked. That's a very good question. Why? What's going on? That's what we need to answer. Now, when you talk about women who are attacked, I mean, as our expert pointed out, one of the reasons is they're easy prey. Why are they easy prey? Because they work the first shift. They got to be at work at 6 o'clock in the morning. They're on the bus at 4 a.m. They work the third shift. They're not getting off until midnight to 1 o'clock in the morning. You know, they're there every day. So her suggestion is, I mean, if you want to look at some of the solutions, what do we do is the question,
right?
You know, one of the things that she says, think about the jobs. There need to be more jobs in the communities, fulfillment centers, factories, call centers, so that those black women who have to work, who need to work, don't have to be standing on the bus, standing outside at 2 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock in the morning, going to work, trying to get home, trying to make money to feed their family.
Those women who you did speak with, were they happy they spoke with you? Were they relieved? Did they feel good about it? Or did they regret it, I wonder?
They didn't regret it. They were strong. And I am very appreciative, you know, because they were hesitant coming in, but then as we spoke, as they saw perhaps the impact that they could have in telling their story, they kind of owned it. And, you know, they have said, come back to me. They're with me. We partners in this now.
I get it. I get it. Well, will you please come on back with a follow-up? Thank you, Dorothy.
Thank you.
Great work. If you would like to share your story with Dorothy as she continues to cover crime and inequality, you can send her an email at dmtucker@viacomcbs.com. And we'll be right back.
In the middle of a roundup, the mayor piled into the barbed wire. She somersaulted over, and then her 2 foals piled on top of her.
Wild horses chased from their home. A deeper look at the practice taking place on our public lands.
We're taking our focus now to the West, where an iconic American symbol is being removed from public land. A portion of northwest Colorado that used to be home to hundreds of wild horses now has none. The West Douglas herd area is about a 5-hour drive from Denver, near the Colorado-Utah border. In September, the Federal Bureau of Land Management used helicopters to round up the remaining 122 wild horses that had been living there. The BLM says the land is not suitable for horses, but CBS News Colorado's Katie Weiss found the area is somehow suitable for thousands of cattle to graze. And critics feel the taxpayers are footing the bill for an unworthy cause.
They've literally just been removed from the wild. They're half an hour out of the wild, and they're like, what the hell is going on?
Scott Wilson has spent years traveling to Colorado's western slope to get stunning photos like these.
In the middle of a roundup, the mare piled into the barbed wire. She somersaulted over, and then her two foals piled on top of her.
This month, he went back to see the latest helicopter roundup and removal of the 122 last remaining Mustangs in the West Douglas herd area.
I think what we're seeing, Katie, is a blunt force approach to conservation, which is costing the taxpayers an absolute fortune.
Last summer, horses in the East Douglas Piceance Basin herd management area next door were rounded up too. A helicopter scares the horses, forcing them to run right into a trap, where they are then corralled into a trailer and taken to holding facilities. The helicopter and trapping work in West Douglas this September comes with a price tag of $187,000 tax dollars. The West Douglas horses will all be taken here to a Colorado prison in Canyon City. Public records show the BLM has a $4 million contract with the state to pay for the care and keeping of the horses there until they're adopted out.
It's very, very rough. There is not a lot of forage. There is not very much water.
Stephen Hall with the Colorado BLM says the West Douglas Roundup was necessary because that area isn't suitable for horses and was designated that way back in the 70s.
The public lands out there cannot sustain horses very well. It's just not a good place to have horses. And it's important to remember that wild horses are in competition with wildlife.
But we found thousands of privately owned livestock cattle are also allowed to graze on that same West Douglas land. That more than 8 times as many cow animal units per month are allowed to graze on those lands than there were wild horse animal units per month before the roundups took place.
If that land isn't suitable for horses, how is it suitable for cows?
Wild horses are a domestic species that live in a wild state. So eventually they will absolutely eat themselves out of house and home on public lands, be a coexistence of a variety of uses of public land. That's the vision that we've been given.
We also found the ranchers only pay the feds at most $15,500 a year for all those cows to graze, in comparison to the more than $4.1 million spent in Colorado to round up and care for wild horses.
Do you think that's really fair on the taxpayer?
Well, whether or not you agree or you think that grazing is an appropriate use of public lands, that's not really a decision for me to make. The decision has been made by the American public that grazing is an appropriate use of public lands.
But horse advocates like Wilson feel these helicopter roundups still aren't necessary.
We believe there's a really cheap, cost-effective solution here, which is introducing fertility control to a far greater degree.
Hall says fertility control will be used more prevalently now for other herds in Colorado.
Trying to administer contraception to 100 to 200 horses, that's doable. The problem is you get to a point where the population has grown so much that contraception is not going to be very effective.
A Colorado bill passed this year will require more cooperation between the BLM, the state, and advocates like Wilson to find solutions to the wild horse debate on which everyone can agree.
And Katie Weiss joins us now from Denver. You've covered this story, Katie, for 3 years now. It's something to see it on television. I mean, these majestic creatures getting rounded up by helicopters. What was that like in person?
Yeah, we went to this roundup last year, and it was really impressive to see these groups of horses being rounded up by the helicopters, as you saw in the package. But as you mentioned, it's a really remote area. It's 5 hours west of Denver. And then once you get out to that area, you actually have to be escorted by the BLM to the roundup site, where you're then there all day long for several hours, witnessing the groups of horses being taken in. And there's also groups of advocates that are watching these roundups there with you. There's also groups of locals, local ranchers, and people who represent those interests who are also there. The advocates are feeling heartbroken to see these horses be rounded up, whereas the locals are excited and happy that they're finally being gathered. So it's really fascinating to see that juxtaposition of the interests and the heated debate that these wild horses have created here in our state.
Very, very interesting. And then you also say the horses, and we see it, they're sent to prison. They're sent to a prison complex, which is a really jarring image. What's that like for them there, and what becomes of them?
Some people think that it's kind of laughable, right, that the horses are literally sent to a horse prison. But actually, it has some, bright lines, some silver linings, in that the prisoners are given a really rewarding job to take care of these horses. However, the other side of it is that it costs millions more of taxpayer dollars to be able to care for these horses when they're at this holding facility. And there are also concerns about whether or not the horses are being mistreated there. And in fact, just last year, there was an outbreak, an equine flu outbreak among the horses at that state prison, and over 100 horses died. And so that's something that we're continuing to follow now, is are these horses getting proper vaccinations once they leave these roundups? I'm
sure you'll stay on it. Thank you so much for the insight. Katie Weiss, investigative reporter, CBS News Colorado. Really appreciate it. And to continue following Katie's coverage, visit cbscolorado.com. And we'll be right back.
Putting mental health in focus.
Being tough is talking to people about it. That is tough. That is courage.
Coming up, a New Jersey teen making a difference for his peers off the court.
Welcome back. We are turning our focus now to mental health and breaking the stigma around speaking up and asking for help. It's not always something that's easy to do. CBS New York's Steve Overmeyer introduces us to a New Jersey high school student who used a setback to move forward and create a safe space for others.
At their high school tennis courts in Gladstone, New Jersey, these teammates suffered through the heat because one player is no longer suffering.
My name's Jack Daler. I like to play tennis. I play on my high school team. We're out in the sun. I haven't seen these guys in a while, and I got to play with them. I mean, tennis is an individual sport, but when you're playing on a team, woo! Nice one, man. It's much easier to just have fun, be out here, running around, being active, knowing that they know what I went through. They're always here for me, and I'm really lucky to have all these people that support me. Good match.
Fate can be unpredictable. Not long ago, Jack's world came crashing down when he suffered a back injury. His dreams of tennis glory dimmed under the lights of a hospital room.
After the surgery, I couldn't walk by myself for 3 weeks, and I was just in constant pain. Ultimately, the mental aspect was harder to overcome than my physical injury.
It wasn't just the intense physical pain. but the pain of losing the ability to play the sport he loved, it left him feeling isolated and hopeless. But deep in his heart, a flicker of resilience remained.
I accepted that something was going on, and I learned that the only way that I'm going to overcome something like this is that if I talk to somebody about it.
Instead of accepting defeat, he channeled his energy into something positive, making a difference in the lives of others.
I created a website called Out of Bounds. It's basically an outlet and a resource for these kids to see that they're not the only ones.
Drawing inspiration from his own struggles, he created a landing spot for teenage athletes navigating the challenges and breaking the stigma of mental health.
It's a huge problem. They think that they can't talk to anybody about it. They're scared to talk to people about it. They're embarrassed that they're not tough, but frankly, being tough is talking to people about it. That is tough. That is courage.
A place where young athletes could share their struggles openly and find comfort in knowing they're not alone.
This one is about someone's lack of confidence in themselves.
Along the way, his own healing journey continued, and that dark cloud of depression slowly lifted. He regained his strength. He returned to the court, not just as a player, but as the captain of his team, leading by example.
Good shot, Bennett. I hope that athletes develop the courage to talk to people about what's going on with them. I hope they find out and realize that they're not the only ones going through this.
Through his own struggles, he found healing and touched the lives of others. Jack's story reminds us that sometimes our greatest setbacks can lead to unexpected triumphs.
But we know his parents are super proud.
Right.
What's the postscript here? What's happened since the site's been up and running?
It's been incredible. He said that there was actually an 82% increase in web traffic to his website since then, but he's also hosted a charity softball game for Athletes for Hope, which is a charitable organization to help athletes who are struggling with mental health problems, and it just seems like he's found his path at this point now.
That's just tremendous. Then he got a high-profile shout-out from a top pro tennis player in the world, right?
Marty Fish. Marty Fish has long been an advocate for mental health awareness for athletes. I mean, he even, has gone on about his own personal struggles with it as well. So when he retweeted that story and just said, "This kid is awesome," I mean, for Jack, that was like a superhero coming through for him, more or less.
So good to see. Steve Overmeyer from CBS New York, thank you. And thank you for watching this episode of In Focus, featuring the work of our colleagues from across the country at local CBS News stations. We have more than 5,000 people, many of them behind the scenes, living and working in the cities you care about. Around the country and in your community, CBS News puts the stories that matter in focus. Until next time, I'm Maurice Dubois.